But I would like to get to something. I would like to get to the wastewater issue. Let me talk lastly about this problem with effluent. Okay, what's coming out of the ground in gas and oil? In gas and oil. Essentially, what is really high in this flowback water is particularly something like barium. This is 2,370,000 parts per billion, or 2,370 parts per million. Another thing that's very high in it has high levels of magnesium. It has high levels of strontium. Okay? Strontium is essentially in the periodic table underneath calcium. We need calcium to build strong and healthy bones, just like the milk people have always told you. Strontium replaces calcium in bones. This isn't radioactive strontium. Okay, so we're clear. Strontium-90 is only produced by nuclear fission, atomic bomb blasts. This isn't strontium-90, but it's strontium, and it weakens bone systems in any mammals, including us, that it's taken in. Other things that are high in this, you can see high levels of bromide and chloride. Why is bromide a problem? Bromide is an ion, just like chloride. You put bromide in a surface water stream. Some of the very beautiful streams that we passed on our way up here today. We're marveling at your countryside up here. It's wonderful looking at some of the streams. You put a slug of bromide ions in the stream, essentially they're going to start interacting with the dissolved organic carbon in the stream. When's dissolved organic carbon the highest? End of summer, beginning of fall. Got leaves falling in there. Got lots of organic carbon going into the water. Now, what's the problem with bromide? Well, when we take that water into a water intake to chlorinate it so that we can drink it in our municipal systems, we are obviously going to chlorinate it. But the very act of doing the chlorination adds more halogen to the system because, remember, bromide is underneath chloride in the periodic table, right? We all remember our chemistry, right? So bromide is underneath chloride. They're both halogens, right? They're both halogens. Bromine has higher molecular weight. You're supercharging it with chlorine, with all this organic carbon in there, and you're going to make lots of brominated and chlorinated organic compounds. Something that we now know are carcinogens in our drinking water system. Brominated and chlorinated disinfection byproducts like trihalomethanes, which can be, tribromomethane or dibromochloromethane. There's a whole series of these things. Suffice to say, they are carcinogenic and mutagenic. And in the Pittsburgh area right now, in the water systems around my place, we are right at the EPA legal limit for these things in water. It's been edging up for how many years? 2 years. 2 years. What's been happening, my goodness, for 2 years? Come on. What's been happening is brine wastewater from oil and gas operations is going to area sewers, sewage treatment facilities, and to, quote, good treatment facilities, where it's being treated or not treated or just diluted and put right into our surface water sources. We're sucking it back up with lots of bromine in it, and we're making lots of brominated disinfection products. I wouldn't want one of these processing facilities in my backyard, but that's a political decision, not a scientific decision. Now, I have a little bit more to say about this, because we found serious public health problems from these treatment facilities, including the one that's supposed to be a brine treatment facility that's supposed to properly treat it. In fact, it was worse than the sewage treatment plants. So what did we find? Or what did we look at? We looked at the city of McKeesport, which is a sewage treatment plant. We looked at Franklin Township, that is a sewage treatment plant too, and puts into the surface water of 10 Mile Creek, which is a very small surface water source. Not like the big Monongahela River with hundreds of thousands of cubic feet per second going by. This is a small flowing stream, like some of the streams that you have. And then we looked at the Hart Resources managed Pennsylvania brine facility in Josephine, one of those treatment facilities, and I put that in quotes, that you probably hear the DEP saying we're taking this all to treatment facilities where it's being treated. Well, I'll show you what this treatment facility is. I'll show you right now. They're a bunch of liars. It's the only way to say it. It's all political spin. Here's the truth. I'm going to go right to the bad one. We were at the Pennsylvania brine facility for a week. We watched the tanker trucks come in. Okay? Why did we do that? Because we're tired of hearing, oh, they're recycling everything. Have you ever heard that? We're recycling everything. That's range. Recycling, bullshit. Bullshit. There's the tanker trucks. This was in December of 2010. After all this recycling mumbo jumbo was going on for 6 months. By the way, an industry isn't judged by the best actors in the industry. It's judged by the worst. And an industry that might be making highly radioactive things should not be judged by those that take care of the radiation, but by those who don't. So let's be clear, the truck tankers are coming in.
The next one?
Next one. This is coming out into the stream. I want you to look at that. You should have smelled it. It's brine. It smells like brine. It's brine. It's full of polynuclear aromatics and organics. You can smell the oil coming out. It's going into the stream. Next one. Look at the plume going down the stream. It's like the brine you see. What treatment did they do to it?
They boiled it.
What?
They boiled it for about 5 seconds and then just spat it back out.
Yeah. Next slide. So, how bad is the treatment? Okay. So, barium can be quite high. I will tell you that they probably took some barium out in their treatment process. But they're still putting in 35,000 parts per billion of barium into the water. The barium that they're putting into the water is above the acute criteria maximum concentration for living things in that stream, period. Here is the chronic level for wildlife, much lower. And the maximum concentration in drinking water of barium is way down here. So you can see how, I'm not saying that people are drinking this water. I'm not saying that people are going up and taking a cup of that and drinking it. They're not. But there's two groups of people that are potentially exposed, and it is a public health emergency that they be told about this. First of all, there are people in this vicinity who have wells private wells that are within 100 feet of this creek downstream. Those of you who have some engineering expertise or just common sense, okay, understand that on a Saturday in the summer when, you know, people are washing the car and washing the clothes and cooking and the kids are outside playing, right, with the sprinkler, you're using a lot of water, right? That means you're pulling a high Q, right? Very high flow rate from that well. We have shown in public health hundreds of times, hundreds, thousands of times. When flow rates go up, you start capturing the water from the creek. And if it's contaminated, you pull it into your house. This has to be stopped. This is a public health emergency. Number two, downstream from here are the communities, essentially, of the Kiskakaminicus Valley. Okay? What are they, like Apollo and...
I'm trying to think of another one.
What's that? Vandergrift. How could I forget Vandergrift? And then it goes down the Kiski River into the Allegheny. And the first community with a big municipal water intake is Freeport. Of course, it goes down to Freeport, to Oakmont, right before Pittsburgh, and then to Pittsburgh, not far down. We need to ensure that we are not essentially putting high levels of barium and other contaminants into drinking water sources that can then be pulled into municipal drinking water systems, because that is an exposure system to expose us all directly to this gas wastewater. And remember what the gas companies are fighting about. They're trying to tell you that nothing can get from this fracked area up into your water aquifer. They're trying to limit this argument to this crazy little thing that I don't think is going to be able to be answered for a long time, when in fact we know the wastewater is going into our streams right now, and we're all exposed. This is crazy. Next slide. Okay, sulfates are high all the time. Next slide. Strontium. Very, very, very high. 3,100 parts per million at its peak, coming down to leveling off at some point around 2,900 parts per million. Next slide. This is a total dissolved solids level coming into this creek. Yeah, all those zeros. 18 million parts per billion of total dissolved solid that is legally being put into Blacklick Creek. Legally. The Department of Environmental Protection is playing a wink and a nod with the gas operators over this. They are making consent orders allowable for this kind of operation to continue. What that is doing, folks, is it is denying you your opportunity under the Clean Water Act for public hearings regarding the NIPD's permits, the National Discharge Permits for these facilities. And it's being done in secret. And I have the goods on it. Right here, right now. Next slide. This is a surfactant and an emulsifier that is used by the drilling companies as an additive to the frack water. Right? You've never heard of any of the frack water additives being a hazard to people, right? Because it can't get from that layer way down there up into the water. But it sure can get into the flowback water, which they're dumping into our rivers. And here it is. 60,000 parts per billion of 2-butoxyethanol, a highly toxic glycol ether, going in essentially 24 hours a day, every day, into Black Lake Creek that flows into the Conemaugh, that flows into the Kiski, that flows into Pittsburgh. This is entirely nonsense that this is made up. This is happening. This is a problem. And that's it.
So now I think it would be great for some questions.
And I need a rest.
In the back there.
Does this facility in Josephine, do they claim any percentage of so-called recycling of fluids?
Do you mean, do they recycle and send it back to the company?
Yeah. Do they claim any specific percentage, you know?
I don't think they recycle anything.
But what do they claim?
They don't claim to be recycling at all.
Okay, because
they're handling, let's be clear about what's going on here. This isn't just about Marcellus. This has been going on for 30 years. They've been accepting, and we just didn't know it. They've been discharging from this stuff from conventional wastewater coming from, brine coming from oil and gas wells, and been dumping it in here all this time. We only found out about this because we were looking about Marcellus. But I hear what you're saying. They're not recycling anything at this plant. Yeah.
Yeah, because that's the plant that's being proposed for this area, waste treatment facility thing. They're claiming they're going to do 100% recycling.
That's all they're going to do is recycle and send it back to...
That's what they're claiming.
Okay. Well, that's a different ball of wax. If all they're doing is recycling and they're not putting anything in surface water, then the problem that you're going to have is related to what do you do with the toxic materials that are removed in the process. Basically, all the dissolved solids that they're going to take out, which are very toxic and really need to be going, I believe, to a toxic waste facility, as well as the salts, etc. That then would be my concern about a facility like that. What's going to happen? What plans do they have to deal with that?
Yeah, they've identified at least one landfill in Dunmore where they say they're going to bury the salt.
Why are you laughing, just so I know?
They've identified at least one landfill in Dunmore, Pennsylvania.
Yeah, but why was everybody laughing when you said that?
Because we know it.
Local jokes. They take anything in
It's a joke facility, in other words. Okay. I just wondered, I don't know what your politics, what goes on here at all.
I was wondering, I don't recall these people liars.
Yeah.
These people who run these treatment facilities.
No, I'm not talking they're all liars.
Okay.
I'm saying this one's a liar.
You have a guy come in and question, a geologist question why they would want to build this plant right next to the Susquehanna River, when in fact most of the wastewater, or waste liquids, are coming from, say, 50, 60 miles away. And
it is puzzling, isn't it?
Yeah, it's a little bit.
I think you know the answer to it.
Okay.
Right? Some of it is going to find its way through a NIPD's permit or a sweetheart deal into the Susquehanna River. Right? Come on. Or they wouldn't, is this going to be on they want to put it on the banks of the Susquehanna, or? It's pretty much right on the river.
The facility already exists.
The what?
It's where there's a pre-existing sewage treatment facility.
Oh, they want to pre-treat this stuff.
They want to mix it with the water, with the liquids that are being reclaimed from the sewage treatment. And then send that back to the drilling company.
Well, okay. See, the devil is in the details with this one, and yeah, and the details are somewhat different than this Josephine plant. Obviously, that is a tragedy there that needs to be shut down. This could be very different But again, I would be certainly suspicious that they want to be on the Susquehanna, and, you know, why do they want to be near a sewage treatment plant? Oh, well, because they have flow. Okay, that makes sense. Maybe it makes sense, but okay. In the end, even if they're going to do this the right way, even if they're going to treat this and send it back to these places, which, you know, that if we could do that, that would solve a big problem with this. And so I'm not against that. To me, the problem is, what do we do with the residual solid waste from this? Are they going to make sweetheart deals? I don't know, your municipalities. With the, with this, where are we, what's the name of this community? Huh? What is it? Huh?
Lucerne.
This is Lucerne? This is Lucerne? Okay, so are they going to use the salts that they get from this process to spread on your roads in the winter to melt your salt?
They did it last night.
Yeah. So they're doing it in Bradford. They're doing it all over the state. The other thing that they're doing with this water when they get it is they're taking it in trucks, and in the summertime they're spraying it over top of dirt roads and roads that are dusty for dust control. Have any of you heard of Times Beach? No? Let me tell you a story about Times Beach, Missouri. And what they did in Times Beach, Missouri in the 60s and the 70s was that they took transformer oils from thousands or hundreds of thousands of transformers, and they thought, you know what, this is a good thing to lower the dust on the roads. And they started spraying it for years and years over all their dirt roads in their community to keep their dust down, to keep dust down in fields. Turned out it was full of PCBs. Turned out that I worked on this project. Turned out that Times Beach, essentially, they had to move thousands of people out of this community to clean it up. And it cost the United States taxpayers billions of dollars to do it. I would tell you that we are repeating these same things that we did in the 50s and the 60s, again now after 2000, because of the weakening of our Superfund laws and our Resource Conservation and Recovery Act laws, which were put in place so these things never would happen again.
How would you rate the toxicity of the soap, what they call, and this is sort of cute, they call it drilling mud?
Yeah.
How does drilling mud compare to the solids that are going to be removed by reverse osmosis at this plant? Obviously not as, I would probably guess not as toxic.
It's not as toxic.
What's your take on drilling mud as
mostly it's the barite in it that I'd be concerned about.
what?
Barite. Barium. There's going to be barium chemicals in it. Why? So you've all heard a little bit about barite, right? Heavy drill muds that they use to cap the disaster down in the Gulf. So barium is a very heavy element, right? Has a high atomic weight. So it's added to drilling muds, essentially, and it helps to make it very, very heavy. So it can be used for its function. I am most concerned about barium in this process. Barium causes all kinds of gastrointestinal problems and has been also associated with bioaccumulation in fish when it's used in aquatic environments. It's not as toxic as this wastewater. This wastewater is, again, this wastewater that's coming out. Call it flowback water, call it produced water, but essentially whatever's coming out of the ground, the longer it's in the ground, the more toxic it is when it comes out, because it's been in communication with that shale layer longer. And, you know, really high levels of all kinds of things, including radionuclides.
They would be present in the drilling mud?
Not in drilling mud.
Well, here's the solution. They're taking the drilling mud, loading it in open railway cars, and shipping it out of the area.
I know, part of it's going to a
They're doing it as we speak.
landfill up in New York.
Already in operation. It's going by way of Buffalo. We don't know where it goes after that.
Okay.
When the summertime comes and this stuff begins to dry out en route, and you
Starts
have
blowing.
a dust that is going to fly into the atmosphere of every single town that this train goes through, what are the concentrations necessary to show that we got a problem, Houston?
Was that a rhetorical question?
I've got 20 tons. I've got 20 tons of drilling mud. Nice hot day, and it's evaporating, and here it goes toward Buffalo. It's going to take 6 hours to get there.
There's no doubt about it. It's a problem. There's problems. No, but so to be fair, because I haven't always been fair today. I don't mean to be fair. But to be fair, you know, and to be honest, you know, this isn't just a problem of the oil and gas industry, this solid waste problem. You know, we are all gluttons for the juice, right? Will anybody in here argue with me that we have too many lights on in this room? Please, do we need all of these lights? Do I need that thing shining at me there? Do we need 2 screens? Do we all need all these lights in the holes for us to find our way out to our cars? Are we idiots?
Yes.
I'm serious about this. We are burning coal at unsustainably high levels, to the point where you can see the fly ash dumps created at our coal-burning electrical generation stations from outer space. We have one on the border of Pennsylvania and Ohio called Little Blue, next to the Bruce Mansfield plant there. It is blue because of all the toxic metals in it, because it fills up with water and leaches out of the fly ash into the water. The solid waste problems in the energy industry, in the energy sector, are legion. Are legion. We must solve this. We cannot keep also, you know, you need to be in common cause with other, not only other areas where Marcellus or there's shale drilling, but other areas that are under pressure by extractive industries for the generation of electricity, because that's what this is all about. And what I mean by that is you should be in common cause with the people of Southwest Pennsylvania and West Virginia and Kentucky and Tennessee, because they are living and have lived a nightmare, as you have in your anthracite region, but they're continuing to live it now by mountaintop removal to get the coal, which puts heavy metals in all of our drainages, especially going, you know, it's coming up from West Virginia, the Mon flows north. It's our drinking water. Longwall mining to get this coal. They're buying whole communities south of Pittsburgh. It's a diaspora. Oh, yeah. Now, you know, this is about environmental injustice. And if you want people to pay attention to the injustice to you, you must also make common cause where injustice has been done to others. And it shouldn't be West Virginia's job to produce the energy for the rest of the country and for them to pay the health costs, just as it shouldn't be your job to produce gas for the country and you pay the health costs. You have colleagues and companions in this fight.
We don't seem to have a national call for conservation, lowering, speed limits, things that used to be thought for common good, and now it's just go ahead and consume.
Couldn't agree with you more. My generation is dropping the ball. We are of age to run things, and we've abdicated responsibility. I'm serious.
Recently, there was a debate up in Sullivan County between Dr. Tony Ingraffia from Cornell and Dr. Terry Engelder, the geologist from Penn State, that brought this industry to where it's at now in Pennsylvania. And they were supposed to be debating geology and engineering. And Dr. Engelder, his main point was not so much a geology point, but it was a sociological one. He quoted John Kennedy saying, ask not what your country can do for you, but what you can do for your country. And he said that Pennsylvania needs to be the sacrifice zone.
Sure, I've heard him many times say that. The tone of the
talk was that we have to be the ones to bear the brunt of our energy independence, even though our gas companies are selling out to foreign interests.
So is that a scientific voice?
It's a political.
It's a political statement by a scientist. Everyone should call it what it is and should have called him for what he is from the very beginning.
Go ahead, your question.
I was going to first thank you very much for your passion, because I think many of us feel this way. I know I many times feel like my chest is going to burst. I feel like I'm really living in an age of insanity.
That's why I say what I say, because I'm tired of my chest bursting.
Thank you. Also for characterizing this as an issue of our day, I think that because it's happening in all these disparate places, we really don't grasp the impact, the broader impact of it.
This land is your land. This land is gas land.
Yes.
It's not a lie. It's everywhere.
On the scientific versus the political, that's a really important point. Mr. Hanger from the DEP from Pennsylvania.
Doing his victory tour now.
Yes, yeah. And so he's I just had a conversation with a representative from Senator Baker's office today. We spoke at length for about half an hour and went round and round, and he was quoting Hanger. He emailed me materials from Hanger, and even though I said, well, sir, he now works for Eckert Siemens, who is representing oil and gas industry, he sent me on pages from Hanger's blog, and number one, Hanger isn't even a scientist, but he says, well, look, he says, one of the things that's happening is this New York Times piece that was really fabulous is being discredited. He's saying that it is outdated information, that many of these laws have been changed, and this stuff isn't happening now.
I know.
So
he's told me that what I just showed you that happened a month ago, he's said it can't be it doesn't happen. And we've said, well, I'll take you out right now and show you that it's happening. So John Hanger, this gets to a very, very, I think, important point that's way above John Hanger's pay grade. And that is, when are we going to start running our federal and state environmental protection agencies for the public health good? What I mean by that is, when was the last time that someone that headed the DEP that you've ever heard of was other than a lawyer? When was a public health person in charge of the DEP? Someone that has been grounded not only in the science of public health, but in the ethics necessary to maintain public health. What I'm telling you is that the very fact that we have the EPA and the DEP that that over the long term have all kinds of political appointees to head them injures their public health function. They cannot be a public health organization. Okay.
So I don't know about anybody else, but I'm extremely tired.
I'm tired too.
We would love to take your questions after the talk, but we're going to end it formally now so that people who want to leave can head out.
So a round of applause for